Leinster edge a tight battle at Thomond Park. My name's Mark, let's talk rugby. This game was a real arm wrestle. Defences on top for much of the game, and when the respective attacks looked a bit dangerous, it was more often it was Munster than Leinster that actually did it, but it was a lot of kind of half breaks and but a decent scramble from Leinster as well. But Leinster starting out like they started well. They're actually looking dangerous into 22. Van der Fleur goes, for a decent carry, but then he gets held up by a combination of Adogbo and Coombs, and great defence from Munster there. Adogbo, he did have to get some strapping on his knee during the game, and you're hoping that he's going to be fit now for a while because he was out for a period, and he's kind of at that stage now where it feels like he was included in like Ireland's training squad for November, and he's kind of on the cusp, I think, of really being able to make a statement and break into the Irish team properly. And I think he would be a massive addition to Ireland's squad, but he's got to stay fit. So hoping that if he did pick up an injury, it's not too bad for him. Leinster then, they win a penalty at the resulting scrum. Harry Byrne kicks them into the corner. He's playing at 10. There's no Prendergast in the squad. And it's kind of interesting, the way that Leinster are managing Prendergast compared to Ireland. Leinster seem to be, more willing to stand him down at times, rotate him out of the team as well. And for me, Byrne has been the more consistent of the two for at 10 for Leinster this year. But yeah, Byrne puts that into the corner. Kelleher then finds Doris in the line out. They set up a maul. Munster look like they've disrupted it. It's not really going anywhere. But Van der Fleur breaks off and he gets over to score, compared to for 7 points to 0. I thought Josh Van der Fleur had a really good game tonight as well. Then we have a penalty to Munster, and it gets marched forward because 10 metres because Gibson Park won't give the ball back. So Crowley kicks Munster into the corner. The maul goes down, and Leinster are able to turn it over there. Then Kelleher overthrows a line out on the edge of zone 22. Casey gets there first. Munster moved the ball, but there's a poor pass, leads to a knock-on from Haley. And I thought Haley overall did very well at fullback, and we talked about, during the Ulster or Connacht Ulster game about how well Stockdale has been doing, fullback for them, and the fact that there is at the moment it feels like a jersey there to be won for Ireland. With Keenan, his continued absence, and Haley, I thought another good candidate for that as well. He's looked very comfortable at the back. He was really good in the air during this game as well. From here, then we have Leinster. They've got to weather like a sustained period of Munster pressure before finally working their way back into the 22. They've forced Munster to scramble it off field, from close to their own line. But, again, a lot of it was like, Munster, they have some nice patterns, but Leinster were just kind of holding them, and then eventually they turn it over and put them under pressure. Leinster then moved the ball from the line out, but Adogbo, he gets in there, turns it over for Munster, and brilliant contest at the ruck there from them, and both teams being very aggressive. At the breakdown, Leinster at times being able to push Munster off the ball and turn over as well. The half then ends with Munster attacking. They break down the right. They're deep into the 22, and about like kind of half of the players are still playing on because they haven't heard the referee's whistle for a forward pass. But looking at the replay, I thought, it looked flat and I thought it was fine. And they should have played on from there. I don't know whether Munster were going to score or not, but still, it felt like, it should have been play on. And maybe, if they needed to, Timo could have checked the pass. But halftime, it is 7-0. In the second half then, Leinster attack off a scrum. They're making progress into 2022, but Ahern manages to turn it over and Munster clear. And Ahern, along with a Dogbo, and you got Sheridan up at Ulster, there's a great crop of young second rows in Ireland, but again, you're not really seeing them really making an impact on the Ireland squad. Like, people who only watch test matches probably don't know who most of these guys are, but it feels like 2026, we're going to see a lot of them, making more of an impact, I think, in green. But from here then, Munster, they struggle in the scrum the first half, but they managed to win a penalty and they go up the line to the edge of the 22, but there's aggressive Leinster defence and that forces them back to the 10-metre line. Leinster then, they turn it over briefly, but knock the ball on. We have a scrum. Leinster win a free kick at the scrum, and Harry Byrne catches Haley napping a little bit as he bounces a kick to 10 metres out from the Munster line. Munster under pressure in the line out, but they do manage to eventually secure the ball and scramble it clear. Munster then get pinged at the maul and Byrne makes it 10-0 from the tee. Pretty much from the restart though, Kelleher pinged for not rolling away and Crowley makes it 10-3. And then, flurry of scores compared to what we had, throughout the rest of the game. Tom Farrell offside from a kick. It was one where Lowe kicked it through and a Munster player kind of almost slipped into the ball, but kicked it forward. And then Farrell catches the ball. So he's obviously offside from that player's kick. And Leinster point to the post, 13-3. Leinster then get pinged at the breakdown. Crowley goes up the line. Munster with a line out into 22. They go through the phases. Into 22. They're moving it from right to left, but not really going anywhere. So Crowley tries a crossfield kick. That gets knocked on by Leinster. Scrum in a decent position to them. Munster then, they move it from there. They're picking and going. They make it all the way up to 5 metres out. Leinster managed to halt their momentum though and force a knock on. Farrell then breaks the line and brings Munster back into 22. Leinster's defence once again, forces them back, but they rally and they suck into the Leinster defence wide left. Klein with really good carry. Then they go back right. Some good hands across the midfield. Nankivell, who I thought had an excellent game for Munster as well, involved in there. And then gets the ball kind of gets offloaded and Crowley picks that up and then puts Dan Kelly over the score. Converges missed 13 points to 8. Then we have Doris with a big turnover from Leinster just to stem that Munster momentum for a little while. But Nankivell then wins a penalty for Munster, gets over the ball at the breakdown. Munster again coming forward. We've got 5 minutes on the clock now. But Leinster once again turn it over and they put Munster back into their own 22. Coming towards the end of the game now, we have a penalty for a high tackle from Lowe. That allows Munster go up the line. Clock's now in the red. They're on the edge of the Leinster 22. Leinster's defence managed to repel them. Munster again get to the edge though, where they've had some joy, at least in terms of making ground, and to do that again. They get themselves back into 22. Leinster, though, managed to turn the ball over to get it off the field, and 13-8 is our final score. And yeah, it really was like a very kind of intense game. As I said, defense is on top. A lot of contesting at the breakdown. and there was a lot of kind of marginal decisions. I thought overall that the referee did well. I'm sure there's going to be complaints because every, tight games like this, there's always complaints about the referee. And some people, might bring up the fact that the referee is not that experienced, but, he's got to referee, a big derby sometime because, you rotate. Same the way you rotate players, you got to rotate referees as well, and that's how they gain their experience. But let's have a look at the stats, and then we shall talk briefly about each of the teams. So let me pull the stats up here on the official site. Okay, so first of all, just one try each in the game, low scoring affair. It wasn't kind of your bonus point each type game. I don't think it was ever going to be anything like that between these two. Tight game, and there were chances for both teams really to win it. Munster, 62% possession to Leinster's 38, so dominating the ball. Offloads then 8-4 in favour of Munster. Meters gain 192-91, so double figures for Munster in that respect. Clean breaks 6-1, and again, it speaks to the fact that Munster looked more dangerous with ball in hand. That Leinster defence, really is, at this stage, looking like something major has to change with their attack, because they're not making any kind of space at all with ball in hand, and opposition defenses are dealing with them a little too easily, especially when you go back to previous seasons where Leinster's ability to manipulate the opposition defense was a big part of why they were able to win games like this fairly comfortably. They're not able to do that anymore. But Munster, were making those chances. They were making those breaks, but the Leinster scramble was good, and Munster couldn't quite just capitalise on them as well. The Defenders beaten then 18-15. So Munster converting 1 in 3 and Leinster only 1 in 15. And again, it speaks to, to that attack not firing properly. And yeah, hopefully they address it. Onto defence then, territory, exactly the same split as possession, 62-38. So Munster, most of the ball, in the right areas of the field as well. But that Leinster defence, was really good, and you got to give credit to Jacques Neighbour for that as well. Sometimes he gets a lot of stick, and for me, unwarranted stick as well, from some Leinster fans. But Leinster's defence really won them the game in this one. Number of tackles then 117-183, missed tackles 15-18. So tackle success 84% to 85%, and both are pretty much at that pass mark for the URC. So again, you can see that the defenses really were the deciding factors in this. Turnovers won then 9 for Munster, 6 for Leinster. Turnovers lost 10-7. Kicks in play then 19 for Munster, 23 for Leinster, and we're kind of seeing slightly less kicks recently than normal. Normally, it doesn't sound very much, like the average number of kicks, like between these two teams, is 21, right? But normally you would expect the average to be somewhere up about 25, 26. And again, it doesn't sound like that much, in terms, but it's just average number of kicks, right? And we weren't seeing as many, kicks where teams were looking to maybe put pressure on the opposition, force some kind of error. We saw some contestable kicks, but it wasn't the kind of like you kick to us and we'll return a kick to you, kind of kick tennis type stuff, right? Where teams are looking to manipulate the opposition defense. Didn't really see that much. It was more you kick to us and we're gonna clear it, or we're gonna put up a contestable, and then we go back to moving the ball through the hands or carries. Then kicking meters, 395 for Munster and 611 for Leinster. And, there is a disparity in that, Munster, basically their kicks on average are around about 20 meters. And then on the Leinster side, the average kicks are just under 30 meters. But you have to take the other stats into account as well, right? Remember, Munster had most of the territory and most of the possession. So when Leinster had possession, a lot of the time it was in their own half and maybe in around their own 22. So they're more likely to kick long than Munster. Munster, because they're up in the Leinster, the Leinster 22, in around the Leinster 22 and the Leinster half for much of the game, you're not going to kick long because there isn't actually that long to kick. You're going to put up contestables, or you're going to keep the ball in hand, and that's pretty much what we saw here. Kicks retained then 2 for Munster, 4 for Leinster. Onto the lineouts then, 18 lineouts out of 18 for Munster for 100% success rate, 12 from 14 for Leinster for 86%. 2 lineout steals for Munster. So you see Munster pretty much on top in that area, and again, it speaks to the number of options they have in their second row stocks, like, and obviously back rows who can jump as well, like Coombs. But it really does feel like, Munster, that they're now developing, a lot more options in their pack, and that's part of the reason why they're now closer to Leinster in these games. Obviously, they didn't win this one, but they won the earlier one in the season. But it feels like that gap is beginning to close because of the players they're able to bring through, and the players who've already been there as well. And it just means that, when the two teams here, let's say, went to the bench, Leinster, yes, they've rested some of the squad, but you looked at the Munster bench and you felt it was a stronger bench. And it's about, it feels like it's been a long time since you could say that, like in one of these derbies. Onto the scrums then, 4 scrums out of 6 for Munster, so not so good for 67%. And, they were under pressure at times, especially Alatoa. Although, he tightened up a little bit in the second half before he got replaced. Leinster 7 from 7 for 100%. On to discipline then, penalties conceded, 9 for Munster, 13 for Leinster. So Leinster definitely, like, their discipline has been, a big disappointment this season, honestly. Yes, the defence is doing well, but it still feels like they're giving away too many penalties. And a team like Munster, again, Munster had chances to win this game, and it feels like if they had won it, maybe that discipline would get a bit more attention from Leinster's point of view. Attacking penalties then 2-3, and defensive 7-10, and then scrum offences 4 for Munster and 2 for Leinster. I think one of Leinster's ones was kind of going a bit early in the scrum. I can't remember. They might have gotten penalised once on the Munster feed, I think, as well. Right, so those are our stats. Now let's talk about the teams. So start with the home team, Munster. You look at the performance, and again, they had chances. They could have won the game. It's not a case of like, they had maybe a chance to score and they knocked the ball on or anything like that. It wasn't kind of that clear cut, where they were kind of TMO review went against them to score a try or anything like that. It was more that they had a lot of good positions, and you could see that they had the ability to get on the outside of that Leinster defence at times. But again, it seemed like once they did that, either the support wasn't there for the player. Leinster scramble was very good, but there wasn't really a plan for, okay, when we get in behind, what's the next play? Like, because, if let's say you've broken on the left, right, and Leinster have scrambled back, and they've managed to kind of, stop you just quickly recycling and darting over the score, which sometimes can happen with that, or just offloading and avoiding the collision with the ball. You think Leinster now scrambled, Leinster players are being attracted to that area. There's now space on the opposite side of the field, but there weren't, there wasn't kind of the ability really in the Munster attack to move that ball to where the space was after they'd broken the line for the most part. So that's definitely something to work on. But again, their shapes and their ability to find that space, decent passing, really good handling, is a good sign for them. But it feels like they need to just kind of level that attack up just a little bit more, and it will go from, what feels like a dangerous attack to an attack that is delivering and getting more scores, and I think they're just a little bit away from that at the minute. Set piece, line out was pretty good. They've struggled with the line out all season. So to go 18 from 18 in this game is a big step forward for them, I feel. The scrum did struggle at times, and there were times when you felt like they just need to get the ball in and out. And when you're under that kind of pressure, it means that it's not really a good platform for you, in terms of your attack, because you don't have that kind of stable platform there to be able to kind of pick which way you want to go. Like the ball comes out and you just have to scramble from there. And sometimes, you can scramble well and get a score, but in the long run, it's not going to be a benefit to you. So that's definitely something to work on. I felt like, their bench had a decent impact for them as well. They have good options now. At 9, you got Casey there, obviously, but Patterson, has been coming on, and showing like that he can kind of live at this level as well. I kind of, I like him at 9 too, and the fact that he can, bring something slightly different to Casey as well when he comes on, so that you have that option there. The pack overall went pretty well outside the scrum. Around the field, I thought they were really good. We talked about the options in the second row for them, but also felt, Munster's depth now in the back row as well has improved immensely too. We didn't see, some of the impressive youngsters that they have there as well, the likes of Ruan Quinn, and a couple of others there, but still, you had lots of quality in that back row as well. So they've got those young lads behind them as well, and it feels like, in that environment with the new coach there, that those guys really are feeding off each other and improving performance as well. So even in a defeat, I felt, it was good. Crowley, at times, in terms of, option taking, I thought most of the time he took the right options. There were a few ones that maybe, he didn't need to take, but overall I felt he went well, even though, again, both attacks didn't click massively in the game. I still feel like, he ran his attack maybe better than Harry Byrne, but again, I don't think in the Leinster setup it's a personnel issue. It feels like a system issue for them. But coming on to Leinster, then, it's another game where they've had to fight for victory. Unlike the last couple of games, they didn't actually have to come from behind to do it, but still it was a tough game for them, and again, I think it's good experience for this squad, because in the blue jersey, these guys have very rarely had to actually fight for wins in the league phase of this competition. And if you go back the past kind of 3 or 4 years, right? So that's definitely a boon for them. The line out for me still needs a bit of work. There was an overthrow and it didn't need to be. They were under pressure at times as well. Like Munster, obviously, got to give credit to them for that, but still, they need cleaner ball off the line out, because, again, it's kind of like the Munster scrum. If it's not clean ball, then it's not a decent platform for your attack. And when their attack is misfiring as it is, putting in an extra kind of stumbling block of not clean ball from the line out really does kind of put the last nail in the coffin, really, in terms of set piece attack. The scrum I thought was very good. Again, scramble defence was excellent, and force up defence as well. There's a lot of times where Munster had worked it into the 22 or within a couple of metres of the line, and Leinster were able to push them out. And even though Munster then would come again, Leinster were able to kind of reset the defence. They didn't get kind of sucked in too often, and were able to kind of go back to the grindstone and push them back again. So that's definitely a good positive for them. And yeah, it feels like they need to get that attack working, and when they do, a lot of, because we're seeing the forwards making good ground with the carries, and so there's a lot of good portions of their game. But until they get the attack going, then there's going to be a lot of these kind of tight games with low scoring, where it can go either way, and one penalty at the wrong time or a mistake in defence could turn what was looking like a victory into a loss as well. But again, it's, for them, it's a decent decent win. And especially given the loss they had against Munster, just before the break for the November test. So I think certainly of the two teams, Leinster are going to be happier with the result. I think both teams can take a lot from their performances, but there are work-ons for both as well.